Welcome to LogisticsSales.com, where today we're starting a brand new segment on establishing sustainable relationships. So stick around and let's get started. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of LogisticsSales.com. I'm your host, Dean, and with me, as always, are my co-hosts, Damon and Gil.
Hello, hello.
Hi, guys.
Really looking forward to today's episode, which, again, is a brand new segment on establishing sustainable relationships. And today, we're going to be understanding win-win dynamics. We're going to be talking about win-win situations, which is a key skill for any salesperson who wants to build long-term relationships and generate repeat business. So how do we achieve this without compromising our own interests, goals, or value propositions? Well, in today's episode, we're going to cover just that. What do you think, Gil?
I think that win-win dynamics are really the foundation of building sustainable partnerships, which I think is why it fits really perfect into this segment that we're about to get started. So this is a really great first episode for everyone. But before we get started, it's important that we understand what is a win-win situation, or in many cases, a win-win-win situation. So basically what it is just when you have two parties, maybe it's the seller and the buyer, maybe it's an employer and an employee, but it's where both parties walk away with some sort of benefit. Typically, there's going to be some compromises involved, but at the end of the day, both parties have to leave happy and with their intentions and their motivations basically fulfilled, and making sure that whatever they need out of that relationship or that partnership has been fulfilled. So this can be achieved in many types of facets in our life. You'll see it quite a bit in the sales world, specifically when it comes to customer and yourself, or you have situations between partners or third parties. But we also see it in things like employer and employee relationships. When we walk into a new job, or if we're working on progressing within a company, you want to be able to have those conversations where you can say to your employer, this is what I want, but this is what I'm going to do for you. And you have that dynamic of basically, I guess, being in a place of what can I give to get? And that's really important for building strong relationships, because you have to be in a place of service in order to be able to get things back that are going to help service you. We also see it in things like relationships. You know, when you look at somebody in a marriage, or first dating and figuring out what's working for them in a relationship, you want to have that same win-win dynamic when it comes to what you are, like, or what your personalities are, or what your values are. You need to make sure that there's alignment there in order to have a long-term relationship that's going to last throughout the test of time.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to understand your customers' needs and their goals. You want to be able to really determine how your product or service is going to make their life easier and solve their problems, which at the end of the day, you want to be. When they pick up the phone, you're that problem solver.
And I think a win-win dynamic, it can be explained in many different ways. And sometimes it's unique to you as a person, or if you work for a certain company, sometimes it's unique based off of your company's needs and specifications. So I'm actually challenging you guys, when you open up the worksheet for today, go look at question number 1, and in your own words, explain what for you a win-win situation is and why it's important for you in sales, or even if it's not for sales that you're working on this worksheet for, maybe it's between you and your employer. Just write down what it means to you and why is it important.
And I think when it comes to the employer portion of it, that's also a key component to what we teach here at LogisticsSales.com is how do you create those opportunities for yourself in a way that doesn't require you to have a huge financial investment. It doesn't require you to have a huge educational background. And how do you create these opportunities just by having the knowledge of what you maybe learn here or what you're learning outside, and applying that knowledge with your employer and saying, hey, how can I help businesses in my community or in my area succeed? How can I create this win-win relationship with an employer that I kind of admire, and maybe a current employer that you're working with right now? How do I create that opportunity where the business wins and I can, and I can win? And the reason why we say, how can I win is a lot of times, a lot of people are stuck in a job where they may not be feeling like they're being paid the amount of money that they deserve, or you're looking for a higher level of income. And so in those type of situations, instead of just, trying to always say, hey, I need more money, I need a raise, I need this, there's always a need in there, right? That I want more. But the thing that we want to teach you in a win-win relationship is when you want that more, give it to the employer too, right? And if you could show an employer and create this strategy where they can increase their revenues, they can increase their profitability, that extra revenue a portion of that can come to you as well. And so that's the takeaway that I want everyone to kind of understand. And if that's your intention, write that down, or at least start having that into your mindset, where if any of those opportunities come up in the future, you know how to take advantage of them.
That actually, I think, goes really well with the diagram that we have here for all of you guys today. So it should pop up on your screen right now, but you'll see that we want to make sure that when we are working on win-win-win situations, that everybody involved is walking away with a sense of accomplishment, with a sense of they have gotten something out of this deal. And so we're going to see that on the employer side, but we're definitely going to be diving into it more on the sales side, so that you can see how those win-win situations can really impact your sales cycle and lead to long-term lasting partnerships.
Thank you, Gail. That takes us right into step number 2. So in order for us to create these win-win situations or win-win-win situations, what we really want to be able to do is articulate our proposition with confidence and clarity to make sure that the parties that we're trying to explain this to really understand where we're coming from, and we're really able to identify what their wants are. And I think this is a major component to creating those win-win-win relationships, is when we can really understand our clients. And when we talk with that clarity, it really gives them the confidence that we know what we're talking about, and makes us look like the expert in the situation. And everybody in that situation wants to be understood, and everybody wants to be able to understand the value proposition of what we're proposing. Because if we fail to kind of mention the value of the service or the product that we're providing, people may not buy in. And the buy-in happens when there's something in it for them. And so again, that givingness of the way that we communicate is going to allow for them to really understand, hey, there is value here for us. So-and-so is thinking about us when it comes to this proposition or proposal. And that's what we want people to feel, is that, when we are talking about receiving anything in return, we're also thinking about the giving component first. And that has to be first and foremost. And that's something that we, again, emphasize over and over again in our program, is give, and everything will work out on its own, right? Have that in the back of your mind, is that if I give enough to the people involved, that they're obviously going to want to give back to you. It's just whatever you put out there is going to come back. And that's something that we talk about a lot in our program, and it's something I hope that we take away from the learnings here.
And I did want to just give a small disclaimer here as well, because I know a lot of our viewers, maybe English isn't your first language and your English skills may not be the strongest, but it's not when we say speaking clearly and confidently, we don't mean that you have to be perfect at speaking English. You can have an accent. It really doesn't impact it. What we mean is that you need to be clear on your message. You have to know what you offer that customer, what your value is, and be able to communicate it. And we've seen so many people that have dealt with accents or language barriers that have really shattered all those glass ceilings, because they're confident and they know how to express and they know how to listen. So I just wanted to leave that there as well. If you don't have very good English skills, that is definitely not a deterrent, and you can still be able to express your value proposition confidently and clearly as well.
Yeah, and that's a great point. A lot of those individuals that you're speaking about were coming from a place of service first, and that's why the success followed. Because when you're dealing with a customer, you, however you present yourself, they're feeling that. And if it's just, gimme, and there's something in it for you over actually, what can I do to help you? It's not the greatest feeling for them on the other side to see. And it's definitely a lot more to your advantage if you go to them and just want to help, and then they realize that, and then that's how we're talking about these win-win-win situations and really see those relationships start to flourish.
So just going back to Gail's point there, public speaking is very difficult for a lot of people to do. And sometimes that fear of how am I going to communicate what I really want? How do I communicate this value proposition to my client? And it doesn't have to be spoken. And that's the other thing that we kind of learned. There's so many multiple ways to be able to communicate that it doesn't have to be verbal. We could do it in an email. We could create a brochure for what we want to show the customer. We can create a video for it. There's so many different ways that we can communicate that can make it safe to have that interaction with somebody. It doesn't always have to be a one-on-one conversation. You can take the fear out of a lot of these things and find the simple ways to be able to communicate it. And the main thing is just let it come with authenticity.
I was just going to say, and I'd encourage our viewers, if you do have struggles or you think there's maybe something, a boundary in your way that you don't know how to get around, by all means, send us your questions. We love hearing from you, and we can maybe answer those questions after we hear from you. Other people maybe experience the same thing as you, but don't let language or any other boundary like that when it comes to clear communication get in your way, because we're here to help, and we can assure you that it's not just the spoken word that's going to get you the results you're looking for.
And you're 100% right, Dean. One thing is, if you want to be compensated, understand that it's our duty to be able to show the value of what we bring to the table. You have to show it in some form or another, and that's all we want to teach is find something. Don't just expect someone's going to give you that raise. Don't expect someone's going to give you that business opportunity. We have to go ask for it. And figuring out that, hey, it's something that I can do or deserve is going to set you in that right direction to be able to go grab that raise or be able to kind of give someone that justification of why you deserve that raise and how it's going to benefit all the parties involved by what you're wanting.
That brings us to question number 2 on your worksheet. Based on the product or service you're trying to sell, what are 3 examples of potential value propositions that you can clearly communicate and articulate the advantages to the customer or employer and how it will benefit them? So again, take your time, go through the episode today, jot down some notes, and then go back to the worksheet and put some thought into it and write it down. And we encourage you to go back to your past worksheet as well to look at some of your past answers, because as you evolve in your journey in sales, some skills you'll start to adopt and you can then apply. So we're all a work in progress, and it's great to go back and always evaluate and reevaluate to get you to the levels that you want to achieve.
And I would say to anyone, if you're doing the worksheet and think, oh, okay, this is a lot of work, if you're going to do anything, answer this one question, because this is probably the most important one. These value propositions are things that you're going to use every day over and over and over and over again in your sales, when you're making phone calls, when you're sending emails. So you want to have them nailed down, and they're going to change. Don't get me wrong. As you develop in your sales journey, you're going to make changes, you're going to adapt, you're going to update. But for now, really do focus on these and write down what are the 3 main value propositions in your business, because those are where you're going to start your foundation.
I love it. And that brings us to our 3rd point, or skill. Damon went over the clear communication, which is crucial in the win-win situations. The next one is to negotiate with respect and professionalism. You want to create these win-win situations with your customer, and you want to be as professional as possible and really avoid those hardline tactics. There's nothing worse than sitting down and it's a take it or leave it. You need to be flexible. You need to be clearly communicating and have a goal in mind, but it's got to be mutually beneficial. So when, again, you sit down and, we've gone through negotiables and non-negotiables in the past and everything else, but once you know what your customers' pain points are and what their needs are, you could clearly communicate and negotiate in their best interest and still achieve something that's desirable to you too, which is very important. So again, by doing this, you can show your customer that you're willing to work with them and that you respect their opinions and their preferences. When you really complete and get to the deal, you also want to make sure that you can back it up. There's nothing worse than just getting the deal done and you have a service or a product you're willing to provide, but then what they purchased isn't what they signed up for. So we've heard the different sayings. We've heard you want to under promise and over deliver. I like to over promise and over deliver, because they get an expectation of, wow, this sounds really great, and when they get it to experience it and it's even better, There's nothing better than you're dealing with a trusted partner in a win-win-win relationship. You hear them say, I wish we would have done this sooner.
A lot of times we see this in the employee-employer relationship, where the employee is looking for that raise. And the employee goes into the office and he goes, hey, I'm looking for that raise. I've been doing this, and this, and this. And as an employer or as a manager, they're thinking like, well, hey, we're all working hard, so we should all maybe get a raise. But so again, this goes back to saying, well, what's in it for the employer, right? Can I justify my claim by backing it up? So if you can bring in results to show increased profitability, increased revenues, benefits, or cost savings for the company, be able to back it up with something. And this is the whole thing about mutually beneficial relationships, is it needs to benefit both parties, not just the one. And so, if you're that type of person that's thought about in the back of your mind, like, hey, you know what, I really want to ask my employer for that raise. I've been working longer hours. I've been working a lot harder than maybe my peers. But how can I back it up to make it beneficial and not just really be like me. I need this. I want this. But how can you make it about the employer and say, hey, you know what? Here's a couple ideas that I have. Maybe you can work out a structure that can benefit the company and then gives you something in return as well.
Yeah, it's huge to show them that it's, again, not just about me, and you have a plan and you're showing them what's in it for them first, and that's where we get into that service mindset where we're giving first, and then the receiving comes. Another important thing also is to be able to validate with data. That's super important. When you're talking about a service or a product, a lot of times if it's the service, of course you want to sell. Part of your value proposition is our service is great. But really in an industry where service is the value proposition, that's kind of a table stake, because if you're in business and you want to provide a service, you better be good at it. Otherwise you're going to miss the boat anyway. So it's the other little things that you do that separates you from others. And if it's going above and beyond, just being available 24/7 and letting them know, and being the one to call them maybe when there's an issue coming up before they even pick up the phone, and doing those little things. Gail's amazing at it. We've been in offices before and she's picked up on things and she's helped with building those relationships to show that you're coming not just from a place of service, but of genuine care. And I know I'm skipping ahead a little because Gail's going to touch on a lot of this, but it just makes you think, and hopefully it makes you think, what could I do to show somebody that there's value in it for them when working with me?
For sure. Thank you, Dean. Before we jump into the relationship side of this, building those long-term relationships, just take a moment to answer question number 3, which is what Dean just touched upon. And the question is, besides price, what are 3 other aspects of your business that you can use as a selling feature during negotiations with a potential customer? And how will you validate your claims? What's the evidence that you can provide to help you make that case?
And get creative with it. There are so many different avenues out there, whether it's, testimonials or feedback from emails or, video content. There's so many ways to be able to say, hey, look at what I was able to achieve, look at what I did, and look at how it benefited you or the customer or the employer. So there's so many ways to do it. And honestly, the more creative you get, the more fun it is, and the more engaged that the people you're trying to show it to will be in what you're providing. As we move forward, though, let's talk about focusing on that long-term relationship, because that's at the end of the day what we want out of our sales cycle. We want to be able to build these customers that are cradle to grave, meaning from the time you start sales and you land that first customer to the day you retire, you want to retain that customer and you want them to be your biggest fan. And so that's what we're going to talk about, how to focus on that long-term, not just those short-term transactional customers. So this is super, super important, because what you're aiming to build within that relationship, within that partnership, is trust, loyalty, and ultimately the satisfaction of your customer, so that they'll never go anywhere else. They're happy with the service that you're providing, and they are happy with the relationship that you've built, so they're not going to go. They're like, I get everything I need from Dean. I get everything I need from Damon. And it builds this almost unbreakable loyalty between you and them, that unless you start detracting from the service that you promised at the beginning, it's probably not going to go anywhere.
And Gail, going back to what you were saying about, creativity and making it fun. there's so many things that we do to build like relationships or to provide information to our customers that we do it in a very fun way. Whether it's fun emails, we add pictures into the emails. We'll do videos. We'll do fun messages, and again, just having a smile on your face and being able to relate it to anything, even outside of work. There's different ways to kind of relate situations or industry trends in a fun way where you can make it exciting for your customers to really want to communicate with you, and it gets to show who you are as an individual and really highlight the human aspect of what we do versus being all business professional. But how do we incorporate just fun loving us into a conversation where we could actually make friendships versus just transactional relationships?
Yeah, and Gail's amazing at this. I know I've got to experience it firsthand walking into an office with one of our customers, and the individual had all kinds of trinkets behind their desk. And we walked out, and she actually raised it and said, "Hey, did you notice all of these trinkets?" And I actually didn't pick up on it right away. So you can see when you come from a place of authenticity and genuine, I really care about this person, that's going to come across and they're going to feel that. So now, thanks to Gail, every time I walk into a customer's office, I'm always looking for commonalities, things that you might picture. So when you want to send that fun email, you can, whether it's, say they had a sports banner of their favorite team, you can, hey, I saw, not because it's a game, but because you actually care about them. And when they see that, that's, you're building a relationship, and to the point you use the term friendship. And as social beings, what better opportunities are for you to not be able to just work with somebody, but build a friendship with them. And when you're communicating with them, you're talking about business professional, but you're also learning things about themselves and their families and their interests and their likes. And that just helps solidify that commitment because they know that you're there for them.
Yeah. And the way that we basically do this is by really honing and perfecting that follow-up. When you have that first conversation, of course you're not going to understand that customer inside out and backwards because you're just meeting them. It's just like when you meet somebody on the street. You don't know them. You don't know them from Bob from Sally. So you have to sit there and have those conversations where you start picking up little pieces and little tidbits of information, one call, one email, one text message after another, and it starts to build this bigger picture. And that's going to be that foundation of those long-term relationships that we're trying to build, because as you start adding pieces and pieces and pieces and pieces to that puzzle, you get this idea of who that person is. What did they value as an individual? And then what is important to them as a employee or a CEO or whatever it is for that company that's going to make them want to bring you on as a service provider. So that's going to be absolutely vital, is to continue those follow-ups. And you can do that in very creative ways, whether it's a quick little email, sending a text message. Like I've even just sent messages on the weekend to some of the customers that have become basically my friends, saying like, hey, I hope you enjoy the sunshine this weekend. And those little things really do solidify a relationship from a partnership to exactly that, a relationship. And that's where we want to be.
And we've said this in the past too in some of our videos that, you've been doing sales your whole life anyways. And as you can see, a lot of these little tricks of the trade are what it takes every day to just exist within your friends and your family and everything else, to be able to clearly communicate and be flexible and negotiate with professionalism and everything. Negotiating, we talked about, with our parents before, if we can sleep out or have a friend sleep over and things like that. So I hope you're picking up these little skills and realize that you have what it takes and you can apply these and practice them, and then they'll get better and better. And you'll see that it's not just going to help your professional career, but your personal career as well, with your family and friends and everyone else. So
thanks, Dean. I've had the privilege of being in sales meetings, both with yourself and Gail, and you guys do this so well, where you're able to have that personal touch with that client. And I think the part that maybe our audience can learn from is, one is just the way that you just explained it, is you go in person and you get to see the person one-on-one, and you're looking for things in the background. So that first component is just keeping your mind open to say, okay, hey, how else can I connect? When you keep your mind open, you start allowing things to start coming in. And what makes it authentic is when you have the similar interests yourself. And so this is, again, what research are you doing ahead of time What are your passions and hobbies? And being comfortable to let that out and say, hey, you know what? If it's pets, and a lot of people will associate, pets with other people that have pets. Pet owners just seem to get along better because they can relate to, the child and that pet that they see. Even when it comes to children or sports, there's so many things that can connect us outside of the professional side that can help build those relationships and really open it up on a personal level. For people that are working remotely, what can we do? We can look at people's social media pages, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn. We can look at people's history and say, oh, hey, you know what? Has somebody worked at a industry that maybe I have some experience in? And so these are things that I'll do typically is look for previous experiences in the person's LinkedIn. Or again, what's your favorite sports team or hobbies? Even things will show up on social media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or anything. But there's different ways to get resources without having to actually be there in person.
Yeah. And then I think the second component to this that's extremely important is what happens once you have mastered that follow-up, you've got an idea of who that person is, and you close that sale. The next step becomes in delivering on the promises that we made to that customer during that sales sequence. When we said, hey, we're going to provide you this XYZ service, and you're going to have, contact with me 24/7, whatever the promises were that were made during that sales cycle, you need to be able to deliver on them and then continue that after close customer service. So when you have a customer that says, yep, okay, Dean, let's go ahead and let's close this deal. So now you've done that. Do you just all of a sudden go radio silent, or are you going to continue that relationship? It's absolutely vital that we do that, because that's what that long-term relationship is going to look like. Otherwise, they may decide, that Dean guy, he forgot about me. I'll just go somewhere else because I don't feel as valued anymore. But if you maintain that relationship, if you're always, continuing to have these little different touch points with them, you're going to feel important, and they're going to feel important to you, and they're going to want to continue to work with you. So it's so important to not just stop once you close that deal, but to continue it day by day by day.
Absolutely, Gail. It's very important. It's as much work that you put into to sign that deal and move forward with that customer. I think it's important to note that you need to work even harder now, because you've told them everything you're capable of doing and what service you're going to provide. Now, rubber meets the road. You're going to show them that you're actually a man or a woman of your word, and you need to now back it up. That brings us to our next question on the worksheet, which is to list 3 benefits to creating long-term relationships over short-term transactional ones. Damon, I think now you're going to touch on learning from every interaction and improve your skills.
Just before that, let's go back to building those long-term relationships. And I think another thing is it's a lot easier to maintain a relationship than to go ahead and start building one from scratch. And I think when we realize that there's a pain point there about, how many touches do we have to do with a customer to build that customer? How hard is it for us to get that customer to trust us, start working with us, and start understanding our needs as well as us understanding their needs? So in order to eliminate a lot of those steps, it's a lot easier to kind of maintain that relationship long term. And that's why, again, it's so easy to do just by doing the follow-ups, but a lot of people forget. And for new agents, it's beautiful, because the more other people forget, we get to build those customers. And one of the biggest reasons that we land those customers is because someone else has forgotten about them and hasn't done the follow-ups and hasn't maintained that relationship to show them that they're valuable. And it's just like a relationship, right? When we show we appreciate somebody and that we're constantly loving on them and we're giving to them, they want to reciprocate that back to us. But when we forget about somebody, it's easy for them to move on to that next relationship and say, hey, you know what? I don't feel appreciated here, or I don't feel valued. And so that client, if we're thinking about being in their shoes, they want that personal touch. They're looking for that personal connection with you, and they just want to feel valued. So that takes us right into step 5, which is learn from every interaction and improve your skills. And so when we say learn from every interaction and improving your skills, what we're really referring to is taking a look at your sales process. How is my relationship with my clients? How am I prospecting those clients? Is there part of the sales process that I can look at and start revising to give me better results? Is there feedback that I could use to help me get increase sales, increase revenues? Am I missing anything? Am I doing my follow-ups properly? Am I looking to have a solid foundation to build that long-term relationship? And it's just really understanding our clients.
And I would just add too is when you look and reflect on your sales process, you should be able to look at what's going on in your negotiations and what's going on in your value proposition. And if you're not getting the results that you're looking for, that's when you need to maybe take some time and go back to the drawing board and see how you can change that value proposition, see how you can change that communication, whatever it is that maybe is like the missing gap or the missing piece in your sales funnel. You need to find that and say, okay, this is where the breakdown's occurring, and then you can make that change. But if you don't do those reviews, it's really hard to understand where is that misstep in your sales cycle.
And I think it's also important to note that once you get to a certain point of success where something is working, it's still just as important to go back and reevaluate and look, because there's always going to be rooms for improvement. There might be small questions you've missed, or maybe a message that wasn't clear enough that to eliminate future questions of the same. So again, it's always a work in progress. We're never going to get to that level where I'm here, I don't need to change a thing, because the industry is likely going to evolve, technology is going to evolve, and there's going to be other things that are going to be in play constantly.
For sure, Dean. And for a beginner sales rep, this is where you really want to focus in on these steps, because the longer you go without having that review process, it's very easy to keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And then you're wondering why it's taking you so long to get going. And so many new beginners will experience that, but it's important to take the experiences that you're having through your sales process to keep reiterating it so you can get better results, better conversations, and you're learning, right? So it's how do I implement the learning process that I'm going through? Every customer is teaching us how to sell to them. Every relationship that we're building is teaching us how to build better relationships with existing clients or even future clients. So it's a great way for customers to see that you're growing as an individual. So even if you've contacted somebody, for example, like a month back, and throughout that month process where you haven't really contacted them or it didn't really lead anywhere, maybe you're building more knowledge and gaining more industry trends and learning from all the right resources to be able to go back to that customer and be able to sell them, because maybe you didn't have the right information before. Maybe you weren't able to show that value proposition and show them the value of the service and product that you were offering them. But as you learn, you're going to become a better salesperson, and it's going to be a lot more natural for you to have that conversation. And when you speak in that natural friendship sort of way, you're going to be able to be very relaxed and keep the customer relaxed at the same point. But it's important, like you mentioned, there's so many changes that happen, whether it's technology, whether it's industry trends, whether there's new regulations that come into place. And you want to be that person that's able to educate your client in that format. That being that expert is again what we always try to teach in this program too, is we want you to be above and beyond. And why do we want you to be above and beyond? Because we want you to be able to earn the amount that you deserve, and we want people to have success. I mean, the whole basis of our program is to watch you succeed. And if we could just have you remember that hey, every time you're researching, every time you're learning, every time you're creating those experiences for yourself, you're becoming better and better. And that value that you're creating in yourself is going to show in the amount of income that you're able to obtain. Or when you go to market, be looked at as that expert, because again, if anyone's looking for information, if you're on top of it, people are going to come to you for that knowledge.
And that's something we see quite often, especially in the transportation and logistics industry. We see people that, there's even times where we haven't been able to close a sale. Maybe the alignment isn't there. The product and services that we provide don't quite align with their business model, but they remember you as that industry expert. And I've seen it from customers and old prospects alike, where they call you up and say, hey, Gail, I have this question and I couldn't think of anyone else who might have the answer, but I thought maybe you would. And if you have continuously kept yourself up to date with what's going on in the industry, what's going on in your markets, then even if you don't have the answer, I'm sure that most times you can at least guide them in the right direction. And that really does go a long way to adding your credibility. And there's nothing wrong with saying, look, I'm not sure, but give me 5 minutes and let me find out. That really does go a long way, especially if you're not doing something actively, if it doesn't have something directly correlated to the service that you're selling them. They'll appreciate that above all else, because you're going out of your way to make sure that you can help them. Coming from an active service saying, hey, whatever you need, I'm in your court. Like, I'm here to help you.
Yeah, and if you're doing it right and you're reaching out and doing those soft touches, even if they're not doing a lot of work with you, whether it's that service or product, and you're still in communication with them, if you're actively listening, those questions still might come up. And if you're able to answer those questions without expecting anything in return, that's going to gain you the credibility, because at some point they may have, a need for your product, or they may have a failure in the service or experience, and they turn to you because they know you've been there before without the expectation, which again will go so far in your sales journey.
And just remember, you can get that feedback from so many different places, whether it's your coworkers, whether it's coaches, mentors, classes that you could attend. But take the opportunity to keep gaining knowledge to make yourself better, and that expertise is going to show to your customers. And again, we want you to become that valuable resource for people to go to. And again, we want your employers to see it. We want your friends to see that. We want to see people in your industry start recognizing you for that.
And that's going to bring us to question number 5. Based on your current interactions, list 3 ways you can actively receive feedback on improving your skills to become an expert in your industry. And Damon, you were touching, it could be your family, your friend, your coworkers, it could be anyone. So some of these questions you can do after the episode. You can take some time and go out and ask others even to find out what the feedback is. And then the next question also, how do you think the 3 methods of obtaining feedback will improve your skill sets to maintain and increase new business? Because at the end of the day, that's what you're shooting for, because you want to have that sky's the limit mentality. You want to shoot for the stars. And that's what we're here for, to not only help give you some of these skills needed, but encourage you every step of the way. That also now brings us to our 6th skill, which is celebrate your achievements and share your success stories. And I think that this, we can speak on this in so many different ways. This really creates the win-win situation. It shows your customer, whether it's your first, in our business line of work, if it's your first shipment or your 100th shipment, anytime you hit a milestone, if you're sharing in that success with them, it's not just acknowledging the work you're doing with them, maybe even remind them, wow, we've already gotten to that stage with you, but it also shows that you're appreciative. We've not recently went to one of our customers to celebrate a huge milestone, just with some coffee and tea and some donuts with a little banner to highlight the milestone. And I think that goes a long way for him. And it shows you and them that you're in it together. You put a little message on the top. Everyone feels a part of that team and wants to see it succeed, which is, the ultimate goal, I think. And it also is going to open up the door for some new opportunities, whether it's growing that book of business with that customer, or more importantly, it might open the door to other customers that in the past might not have even considered you.
And what it reminds me of is the saying that when you're happy, you're more likely to share with other people. When you're really happy inside and you're joyful, this is what we're kind of creating by giving back here, is we're creating that emotion with people and sharing that excitement and saying, wow, hey, we just celebrated 100 shipments. Let's celebrate that, because it feels amazing. And, one is just appreciating the own work that you're doing, that makes you feel great about your job, but also celebrating the person on the other side that's doing their job. Like, they also have a job, and your appreciation to them gets them excited, and that joy is going to spread, right? And that's the whole concept of this is can we spread the happiness? When someone's upset, usually what happens is they start shutting down. But when you're happy, you're actually growing, and it's actually blossoming into a beautiful relationship. So just keeping like a simple concept like that in mind lets you know that, hey, you know what? Yeah, you know what? I want to make myself happy, but I also want to spread that with people around me, and that appreciation spreads. And if we realize that, then we just say, hey, you know what? Why wouldn't we want to do this? How do I want to feel when I'm doing my job? How do I want my customers to feel when they work with me? How do I want to build that friendship? And it's just like, again, we're related to that relationship, right? And when you give in a relationship, something always comes back.
Yeah, Damon, you bring up a great point, and it's really celebrating the opportunity that you were given to even provide that service with them, and it shows the appreciation that much more. Which also brings you to the point where you can now, as you're celebrating and acknowledging and appreciating the opportunity, you can ask your customer for referral, and that can be looked at two different ways. I think when I hear referral, I'm thinking of them saying something that you can use to other customers in the industry, but recognize that referral might not even be something that comes to you, because if you're doing a job for them and it's a service that they really appreciate, they're going to be talking about you anyways, because they're going to be dealing with other people's within the industry. So understand that everything you do has consequence. If you're putting it in and pouring into that customer, you're going to see positive results. Whereas before, if you just do that transactional relationship and you work so hard to get that first opportunity and then you forget about them, that's going to have consequence too.
Yeah. And I would just add in there as well that when you are asking for something like a testimonial or a referral, make sure that you give before you ask to get something. It's super important that at the end of the day, like they're the one who's paying for your service. So you want to be the one who's appreciating them first and foremost. And it can be anything from saying like, hey, if can I get this referral for you and I'll take you out for lunch, or here's a little gift. It'd be great if we could get like a testimonial from you. Even something as simple as ask them for a testimonial, and then when they're done, send them a $5 gift card for a coffee, so that hey, thank you so much for taking some time to fill that out. Your next coffee is on me. Just something super small that's going to make them feel warm and fuzzy inside, that makes them feel good for acting in service for you. And that's really important, because we want to be acting in service for them as well.
Yeah, it's a huge victory. We talked about celebrating the milestones. You should celebrate it for yourself as well, because when that customer finally chooses you, that's a huge leap of faith, really, and trust in you. So you should be proud of the fact that they're now willing to do the work with you, and show them that you acknowledge that, hey, you've had a bunch of people you could have picked from, and you picked me. So recognize that and be proud of that and celebrate it.
And now as we head into number 7 here, remember that in order for them to come to that point where they're going to say, I pick you, I'm going to do work with you, there's going to be that negotiation phase, and you're going to have to compromise. When we go into these negotiations, you may have your list of what I want, what the customer wants, but there's never going to be an exact match. It just won't happen. You're going to go into it. They're going to have their non-negotiables. You're going to have yours, but then you're going to have to wiggle on things. And, maybe they want X, Y, Z and you can't really provide it, but you could do A, B, C. So it's that negotiation that goes back and forth, and that openness to, I guess, just kind of fluctuate between what's most important and what's most needed in order to find a compromise that's going to work for everybody.
Just to piggyback on that, Gail, let's cover question number 7 and 8 right now as you go through this. We can talk about these, and you can take some time afterwards like we talked about before. But write down a previous experience where you successfully created a win-win arrangement and how you celebrated that achievement. If you didn't celebrate it, how would you have liked to acknowledge the accomplishment and share your appreciation with others? So again, this could be something professional, but it may be something personal that happened where there was a win-win situation that maybe you didn't even acknowledge at the time, and it might jog your memory. And even if now you go back and thank them for the opportunity and watch the change that happens, it'd be a really cool experience for you to try. And question number 8, based on your product and service, what are 5 potential compromises between your company and the customer would you suggest in order to lock in the sale?
And I think it's really important when you go into those negotiations that you already have an idea of where you're willing to compromise and what the asking points from the customer might be. You might get, thrown a curveball if it's something way out in left field, but you want to have an idea and say, okay, this might be the things that they're going to come ask for. And if they ask for, what is my compromise going to be? And you may not know all the answers before that meeting, but you should have at least a general idea of the way the conversation might go. And if it doesn't go that direction, you just pivot and you continue. But if you come in prepared, it makes it a lot easier to negotiate and find those beneficial terms for both parties.
And listening becomes a key component of that. better listener you are, the more you're going to be able to understand the actual wants. And when you can listen to those wants from that customer, wants and needs from that customer, you're going to come up with great solutions. The great solutions to come up with those win-win situations, or even win-win-win situations that we talk about. And, here's a couple more examples of some of those win-win situations that, we kind of want to finish off with, and giving you some more insights as to what these look like. And the first one here is like locking in year-round pricing that benefits the transportation provider by giving them consistent business and stable pricing, while the customer gets capacity allocated and doesn't have to worry about the rate fluctuations. So you want to say something, Gil?
Oh, I was just going to say that basically, when we talk about this example, what it does is it gives the carrier that stability that they're looking for. Even if the rates may not be quite as high as they'd like, they know that they're going to have that consistency. They know that they're going to be able to keep their employees or their drivers busy. But it also gives that customer stability and reassurance that they're not going to be left high and dry when the markets pick up and all of a sudden everyone says, oh, all of our trucks are booked. So it's that compromise that we're talking about, that win-win scenario where it's like they've given a little, we've given a little, and we found that middle ground that's going to make everybody happy and make everyone's lives easier ultimately.
I think the next example here is also the employee-employer relationship, where we talk about negotiating a flexible work schedule. And sometimes, if you're looking for something different from your employer, or your employer doesn't want to maybe pay the salary and wages that you're expecting, you can create different win-win situations where it's like, okay, hey, you know what? Maybe I do the same work that you want me to do, but maybe I could do it in less time. And then maybe I could do it on a flexible work schedule. I don't have to really be in the office. I could do this from outside as a consultant or as a contractor. But there's so many different ways to negotiate that, to create that win-win with your employer. And sometimes even with customers, like we do this with our clients all the time as well, where, maybe the on-time delivery is not as important to the customer, and it's just a matter of getting it there within a certain time frame. So creating that flexible schedule also allows us a little bit of leniency on, hey, you know what, maybe this is not an expedited shipment, but we have a little bit more time. And same with like companies like Amazon, where if it's not Prime, they always try to get the extra couple days to not to charge that premium, and to have a little bit of flexibility, and understanding that if there's flexibility provided in that situation, you could offer that discounted rate. So again, it's just coming to that compromise of how do we create win-win situations where it benefits both the person that's price sensitive and the person that is looking for that benefit. Next one we have is offering a customer a discount on future purchases in exchange for a bulk order today. And so you see this all the time, and whether it's retail stores, or you see this even in contracts that we do, that sometimes the volume will offset the individual shipment. And so if we do it in a volume situation, we can make less margins, but we ultimately make the same profit that we're looking to make, whether it's a single sale or it's bulk. And so realizing that there's power in numbers, and being able to negotiate that as well, offer, again, it's how you position that when it comes to that client. If you can position it in a package, right, and go for the bigger sale, bigger numbers, sure, yeah, you could ultimately have a win-win situation where somebody may only be focused on the one thing that's in front of them, but it's your job to get them to expand outside their mind to be able to see the benefit in working with you and partnering with you. The next one we have is which is a partnership between two companies where one provides technology and the other provides market access.
There are actually quite a few companies out there that specialize specifically in transportation and logistics. They specialize in like freight boards, truck allocation, load boards, stuff like that. But they work with a lot of companies who are able to promote those technology services to the mass of truckers and the mass of trucking companies and freight forwarders and logistics companies. And without that exposure, they may not be able to bring in the amount of business that they are looking to. And technology companies are, they cost a lot of money. So being able to get their product in front of the right people is extremely, extremely important. So that's kind of what that type of win-win situation is taking a product and service, matching them together in order to get to the right audience.
And we see that a lot with affiliate marketers. So marketing is huge, and affiliate marketing has become such a major component into creating extra revenues. And we see this with, again, Amazon. We see this with all sorts of different companies where people will create their own websites and like Shopify or something else and become an affiliate for any product or service and be able to market that to the masses. And that's so big in social media. Social media, we see it with Instagrammers, anybody on any sort of platform that could, like TikTok, that could take any product and service and now elevate it to their millions of viewers and be able to cash in on those opportunities.
Yeah, there's so many different areas where you can come up with real world examples of win-win situations. One as simple as a carpool arrangement that saves money or gas and reduces environmental impact for all participants is a huge win-win scenario where you have people going to the same place of employment and they're like, I don't want to drive every day if it's a long commute, and neither do you, so why don't we chill out together? And next thing you know, you look at, how did we do that? There was a negotiation that took place, there was a give on each side, and there was a win on each side. So you can use these examples throughout all different aspects of business, and it'll trickle off into your personal life as well. And it'll make you not just a better salesperson, but a better human.
And I see that all the time. That's a simple example, Dean, great example that I see on Facebook. Simple, somebody just posting like, hey, I'm working in this city and it's, maybe a half-hour drive from where I am, and now you're looking to commute with somebody, and it's something simple that anyone can do, and it may seem complicated, it may seem like, oh man, it's a big step, but so many of these strategies, again, we could simplify them to such a point where it's easy for anyone to do. And as soon as you start looking abroad, or you start looking and these things start getting encapsulated within you, again, what we're trying to do is just expand that mindset. When we expand that mindset, you guys start seeing examples of this all over the place.
Yeah, I was actually talking to my mom the other day. We were talking about some of the concepts that we've been discussing here at LogisticsSales.com, and she was basically saying, like, how do you make that mindset shift? How do you go from having a certain idealism and changing it into one? For example, in this case, how do we change it into looking at scenarios and finding win-wins? And she was like, you know what? It's kind of like when you are a kid and you chew with your mouth open. You get used to it and you're like, nom, 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 nom. And then, you get told enough times, chew with your mouth closed. And eventually it just becomes instinctual. And that's how we are trying to teach you guys these mindset tricks, because by repetitively hearing things over and over and over again, eventually it becomes hardwired into your brain. But you have to put yourself through the work. You have to go through the process of learning it, understanding it, and then practicing it in order to make it a habit. So we hope that these things are going to be able to assist you and give you the tools to take something that might be a foreign concept now and eventually developing it into a part of your daily life habits.
Yeah, it boils down to consistency. I just recently seen a video with a famous athlete, and he was talking about hard work. And the message that he delivered, which I found so powerful, was you don't have to be special to be great. You just have to be willing to do the little things for an extended period of time. Another example of that was another athlete after the Olympics just finished. One of the most accomplished swimmers was talking about there were plenty of times where he didn't want to get up in the morning and go to practice, but he just did. And now I think he's one of the most decorated Olympians in the sport of swimming ever. But again, it was just having to get up and do those things, knowing that if I put in the work, you're going to have the results. So with all of these episodes and all of these skills that are going in to help you on your sales journey, we hope that by listening and hearing, applying and adopting, you'll become a better salesperson day in and day out. And that's the end goal. So we hope this episode gave you some insight on how to make win-win situations for you and your customers. And in our next episode, we're going to be continuing the Establishing Sustainable Relationships segment. And next time we're going to be focusing on defining a clear objective. So we hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we wish you all the best, and looking forward to hearing from everyone. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. Bye.